we're going to talk about Epstein, but I have to talk about the Supreme Court. Drop me a note if you manage to see my post that I titled "The Fourth Amendment Amended." I woke up furious this morning, and I had to sit down and put pen to paper and write about what the Supreme Court did, amending the Fourth Amendment to basically discriminate against our Hispanic brothers and sisters. And I'm going to talk about that after. I can't talk about it first because my blood pressure will spike and I'll start screaming. So we'll save that for after the Epstein discussion. Marie, Barbara, Koshin, Ellen. Okay, the names just jumped on me, so I'm sorry. I'm going to miss some, I think. Marie, you jumped out a little too soon. We're close, though. Hello, Stephen, Marcella, Kathleen Hamlin, Fred, Jack. Let's see. Nikki, just subscribed. Thank you, Nikki. Nikki Petch, Pech. Thank you, Nikki. Jack Peacock. Yeah. Fred. All right. Let me try to catch up with the names and then we're going to get into it. Caro, Claire. Kathleen's counting us down too. Sue Lynn, Lee, Gary, Mary, Kathy with a C, Linda. First time live. Thanks, Nikki. Ellen, first time. Thank you, Ellen. Linda, Betsy, another Kathleen. Oaths Matter. Did I see you already, Oaths Matter? I don't remember. Hello, David. Not your first rodeo. Hello, Katzenetson. That would be Kathy. See, I'm getting to know everybody. Hello, John. Woke from California. I love it. Yeah, better to be woke than be asleep. Hello, Gonzo Gato, Marie, Connie, Dr. Joe, Rockford Williams, Rocky. If I ever had a son, now I had 5 daughters and I came into a son later in life, I would have named him either Rocky or Max. I love those two names. I'm not crazy about the lead actor in Rocky, but I love the movie. All right, let's see. I think we're just, hello, Barbara. Ruth, hello, Ruth. Yeah, we're all pissed off, Ruth. Okay. Your husband's Peruvian, Claire? I see that. Yeah, we're going to talk about our Hispanic and Latino friends in a minute. And we're going to stand up for them. Oh, Supreme Court. All right. Yeah, I would urge everybody. David said he hasn't read it yet. If you get a few minutes, I just kind of poured my heart out into a piece this morning. It's not that long. It's about 1,000 words about what the Supreme Court did to the Fourth Amendment. They amended the Fourth Amendment. Yeah. Let's do a countdown and then let's get going with Epstein and then we'll talk Fourth Amendment and Supreme Court. All right. Now I'm looking for the next person. Hello, Susan. Diane. All right. Ruth's got it. 3, 2. Hello, Ron Kramer. 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for jumping on this Tuesday night, if I'm not mistaken. I want to start with Epstein, and then I'm going to have to talk about the Supreme Court because I'm effing furious. I mean, really, really, the fury that has built inside me ever since waking up this morning. We got to fight this fascism with everything we've got. Everything we've got. We can't let them win. We don't want to become Nazi Germany, but boy, are they moving us in that direction. I don't often talk about that because I don't like to make those comparisons. But when the goose stepping shoe fits, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with Epstein. So I think I touched on it last night, but I've had more time to absorb the reporting and go through the letter that Donald Trump and his effing flunkies in Congress. He didn't write that letter. That's not his signature. How foolish do they believe we are? How gullible do you have to be to believe Donald Trump didn't write this when the signature looks identical, when he was best friends with Epstein, when he said things like, we share the same appetite for women and Jeffrey likes them young. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Donald. So what somebody did, stick with me here, is they went back and They snuck into the Epstein estate, where all of Epstein's papers and documents are. I guess those that weren't seized by various law enforcement agencies during the multiple investigations into Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking of young girls. They snuck in, they seamlessly inserted this into a birthday book that was put together by Ghislaine Maxwell in 2003, before Donald Trump had run for office. And they didn't put anything in there directly incriminating, like, hey, Jeffrey, thanks for hooking me up with a 14-year-old last night, because that would be directly incriminating. We're going to talk about why this is inferentially incriminating in a minute. Give me a case to prosecute, damn it. No, they kind of danced around the incriminating aspect of a letter that they made up and somehow flipped it into the book that's in the possession of the Epstein estate, those lawyers. And so when Congress subpoenaed the Epstein estate for documents and other materials, they handed over the book from 2003, which had this letter in it. But it's a fake. How fucking gullible do they think people are? And his flunkies in Congress fall in line and look like absolute jackasses, spineless, sniveling cowards, lying to the American people, lying to their own constituents. Come on, man. This letter is not only creepy, it's not only conspiratorial, but it sure is incriminating by inference. In case you haven't read it or heard reporting about precisely what it says, it's very short, and it says voiceover. So it looks like this is a conversation, imagined or otherwise, between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And it says there must be more to life than having everything. Yeah, I guess abusing young girls is a little bit more than everything in Donald Trump's estimation. There must be more to life than having everything. Donald says, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey says, nor will I, since I already know. I also know what it is. Donald says, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. We know what they're talking about, friends. Jeffrey says, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald says, enigmas, and I'm having this, I have a printout that's not very clear. Donald says, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey says, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. And Donald says, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Donald J. Trump, and he signs, as he sometimes does to his friends, Donald, his first name, with a line. And you look at the signature, it's identical. It's identical to signatures we've seen a bazillion times when he would take his little nubby fingers with a Sharpie and sign with his little KKK hood points. Whether that's intentional or not, I don't know. You know, I'm no handwriting analysis expert, but I've used them in my investigations and I've sponsored them in trial. But here's the thing, folks, you don't need to be a handwriting analysis expert to know that Donald Trump wrote this, given the circumstances, given the substance, given the signature, given his close affiliation with and affinity for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's affinity for young girls, right? As evidenced by pictures and his, sneaking into the locker room, watching beauty pageant, Miss Teen America pageant members undress. And he has said, and saying, it's tough for him to date women who are older than his daughter, saying that when his daughter was 17. I mean, this is not a secret. It's not even an open secret. It's just out in the open. So, of course, the evidence shows that Donald Trump wrote this. That's the only reasonable inference. Sneaking it into a book in the possession of Jeffrey Epstein's estate lawyers, a book that was generated by Maxwell in 2003. Come on. Come on. And yes, it's creepy. Yes, it's conspiratorial. And yes, it's incriminating. Incriminating evidence does not just look like somebody confessing to committing a crime. Incriminating evidence doesn't just look like you've got the murder weapon hidden in your home and it's the weapon that was used to kill the victim. Incriminating evidence is usually something that you can apply reasonable inferences to and reach the conclusion that it's incriminating. And that's exactly what this is in all its ugliness and obscenity and indecency. The language, the sentiments expressed, the fact that they share secrets we already know what they both had a proclivity for, the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a horrific, horrific sex trafficker of girls. And I'm not even going to talk about the other evidence we saw about the check and the reporting about how, we're depreciating girls and Donald Trump's buying a depreciated girl. Why? Because, that's not Donald Trump's words and or images, but this is Donald Trump's letter with his signature. And the other thing, which I may have mentioned last night, I urge you look at that image of what is obviously an outline of a female body, and I leave it up to you. Does that look like a woman's body as drawn, or does that look like perhaps a young teenage girl's body, given the way he has chosen to draw it? I'll let you reach your own conclusions about that. But here is the continued good news on the Epstein front. The shoes are still dropping, and there are more shoes to drop. Why do I say that? Well, because in some of the reporting, we learned that one of the attorneys for the Epstein estate said that the initial document production had been transmitted to the congressional panel, the congressional committee, and Epstein's estate, the co-executors, will continue to produce on a rolling basis documents responsive to the committee's subpoena. What does that mean? More Epstein documents are coming from his estate. And I have a feeling we're just getting warmed up on seeing the incriminating information, evidence, and documents from the Epstein estate. This scandal has legs. Might this scandal be the one that resonates with Trump's MAGA base? Might it be the one that ends up taking down the Trump presidency? Hard to say, but it seems like, this has touched a nerve. When Marjorie Taylor Greene stands up for the victims against Donald Trump and the positions he's been espousing, this obviously has touched a nerve in a way that all of Trump's other abuses haven't. With that, let's turn to one of Trump's other abuses, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the Supreme Court opinion. Because, God forbid, what should also touch a nerve is that our Hispanic brothers and sisters in the United States, particularly the millions of folks who are here undocumented, but are living honest lives, paying taxes, not committing crimes, certainly haven't been convicted of any crimes. They are raising their families. They're working their asses off. We know. We see them. And Donald Trump's roving band of masked marauders who are assumed to be law enforcement of some type or another, but it's really tough to tell. We're engaged in these sort of wholesale roving immigration sweeps where they're just sweeping people up. And let me set it up before I get to the Supreme Court opinion, though you already know this has a very unhappy ending. There were hearings held and evidence presented to a judge out in California, Judge Frimpong. And Judge Frimpong concluded, based on the evidence, that these roving immigration sweeps, which, mind you, friends, were catching people up in their net, their figurative net, American citizens, documented immigrants, and undocumented immigrants. They were all being subjected to searches and seizures. Judge Frimpong stated that there is a, quote, mountain of evidence that these operations are violating the Constitution. Mountains of evidence. That's the judge's conclusion after hearing the evidence. And she put in place an injunction essentially saying your unconstitutional conduct must stop. What unconstitutional conduct? Well, the Fourth Amendment, before you're allowed to seize somebody, seizing them means stopping them, grabbing them, putting them on the ground, putting a knee on their neck, handcuffing them, arresting them, taking them into custody. Those are all forms of seizures as that word is used in the Fourth Amendment. And you know, we're going to talk more specifically about the Fourth Amendment, my favorite amendment, in a minute. The judge basically prohibited law enforcement from acting unconstitutionally by seizing somebody simply because they look a certain way, they talk a certain way, and they happen to be in an area where there are day laborers. It's not constitutional to take somebody into custody, to seize them, to tell them they're not free to leave, to handcuff them, to put them on the ground because they talk a certain way, look a certain way, and are in the vicinity of day laborers or appear to be day laborers themselves. That's not fucking constitutional. I mean, that's like saying, hey, look at those people look Jewish. Let's round them up. So Judge Frimpong simply ordered the law enforcement agencies engaged in this kind of conduct to stop, prohibited them from doing stuff that's unconstitutional against predominantly Hispanics. She had a hearing. She reached thoughtful conclusions. She went through the law, the precedent that supported her findings, her ruling, her conclusions. An appeals court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, affirmed Judge Frimpong's findings and rulings and injunction. So a bunch of federal court judges thoughtfully came to the same conclusion based on the facts and the law and the Constitution. And then it went up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court amended the Fourth Amendment by throwing it all out. So the Fourth Amendment, which is what this is all about, states the following. And you've heard me say it's my favorite amendment. As I wrote in my piece that I published on Substack earlier today, don't get me wrong, I love me some Fifth Amendment. I love the right against self-incrimination. I think it's a good thing that police can't beat confessions out of us, right? I really like the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. Love the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process, which means that before the police can grab us, seize us, throw us on a plane, ship us off to a prison in El Salvador, we have a right to notice an opportunity to be heard in court and let a judge make the decision as to whether we can or cannot be deported and to what country. At least in theory, we have that right. Those are our Fifth Amendment due process rights. And I also love the Fifth Amendment protection that we get from the grand jury, that a felony charge will not be indicted against us unless a grand jury, the citizens in the community in which the crime was committed, our fellow citizens, unless they decide we should be indicted for a felony crime based on the evidence. We can't be indicted for a felony. It takes the community to return a felony indictment. I love the Fifth Amendment protections. I love the Sixth Amendment protections. I really do. The right to a jury trial. Only members of the community in which the crime was committed can declare that one of their own, a member of their community or somebody who allegedly committed a crime in their community, can be held responsible, can be found guilty. Only the people can do that. The prosecutor can't. Only the people, your right to a jury trial, can do that. That's why it's such an important safeguard against prosecutorial overreach and abuse and misconduct, that we have the Fifth Amendment right to a jury trial and a public trial. That's another Sixth Amendment right. No secret star chambers. That's important, right? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Transparency in all things is a good thing, an important thing, and guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment right to a public trial. And I especially love me some Sixth Amendment right to counsel. My fellow members of the legal profession on the other side of the bar, defense attorneys, God bless them. I have such respect and admiration for the work they do, because they're not only zealously protecting the rights of their client, defending their client against accusations by the government, but they are also serving as a check against prosecutorial and police abuse and overreach and misconduct. Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Love the Fifth Amendment, love the Sixth Amendment, but the Fourth Amendment has a special place in my heart. And here's how it reads. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Shall not be violated. Until yesterday, until September 8th, 2025, that is what the Fourth Amendment provided. Today, given what the Supreme Court just did in this horrific case, tossing out what Judge Frimpong and the judges of the Ninth Circuit said was the right ruling based on the facts and the law. Today, and moving forward, the Supreme Court amended the Fourth Amendment, which they can't do. Supreme Court can't amend the Constitution, even though they've done it before in the presidential immunity context, right? When they declared the Constitution is unconstitutional, because even though a president must take care that the laws of the nation be faithfully executed, that's a presidential obligation by the express terms of the Constitution. 6 radical right-wing Supreme Court justices said, fuck that. No, we're going to decide, contrary to the express terms of the Constitution, that a president can commit all the crimes he wants, victimizing the American people, and he can't be criminally prosecuted. That's the opposite of taking care that the laws of the nation be faithfully executed. And one of our preeminent constitutional scholars, Yale law professor Akid Ria-Lamar, said what the Supreme Court did is they ruled that the Constitution itself is unconstitutional. So they've done it before, and here they go again. Now, here is our new Fourth Amendment. You ready? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against an unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated unless they look a certain way, speak a certain way, and happen to be in the area of day laborers. That is the new Fourth Amendment as modified by the Supreme Court. You know, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated unless they're Hispanic, they speak Spanish, or they speak English with a Spanish accent, and they happen to be in the area of day laborers, or maybe day laborers themselves. then the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply in full force to them. That is racial ethnic profiling, plain and simple. And it has now been imported into the Fourth Amendment, into the Constitution by this corrupt Supreme Court. What's next? Are we going to go back to separate but equal accommodations? Government sanctioned, government sponsored racial segregation. Separate but equal, the horrific Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case, which fortunately was killed dead previously by Brown versus Board of Education. Are we headed back there? I fear we might be, friends. Not hyperbole. I fear we might be. And I would ask you all to consider reading both. Before I get to the legal opinion, I was going to urge you to read both Justice Kavanaugh's separate opinion agreeing in the result that they should amend the Constitution to discriminate against Hispanics, and the dissent by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, a mighty justice warrior for the ages and certainly for today, for our time. I would urge you to read them both. And now I just forgot what I was going to say because sometimes my mental train goes off track. Before I urge, I know what I was going to say. I think before I urge you to read them both, I wanted to mention that the majority opinion that amended the Fourth Amendment to discriminate against Hispanics and allow for racial profiling, make no mistake about it, that's what it does. It's not just me saying that. That's what Justice Sotomayor, in an opinion joined by Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, said, because that's what it does. The majority opinion didn't even have the balls to author an opinion. They just said, yeah, screw all those lower judges, trial court and appeals court judges. You're wrong. You're wrong. We're not going to tell you why you're wrong. We're not going to tell you how you're wrong. We're not going to explain why, after you had a hearing and you listened to the evidence and you reached those supportable opinions about the fact that there's a mountain of evidence showing the ICE agents are acting unconstitutionally. And then you took all available precedent and you applied it to the facts that you found and you reached a completely supportable conclusion. You're wrong. All of you are wrong. But we're not going to tell you how or why, and we're not going to give you any guidance about how to retool and do things right in the future, because we're an imperial court. We don't have to tell you. We've got a shadow docket. We can hide our fucking rationale from you. Do you know how corrosive that is, friends? Do I get this pissed off every night? We're living in the coming autocracy where, fascism is knocking at the door. Barbarians at the gate. It's not playtime. Do you know how corrosive it is to the federal judiciary when Supreme Court justices shit all over trial court judges and a court of appeals judges, and they don't even have the courtesy or the courage to say why all of those judges were wrong? The reality is those judges weren't wrong. Those judges were right. Those judges were right in prohibiting federal law enforcement authorities from violating the Constitution by profiling Hispanics. The judges were right, and the Supreme Court is wrong, and they don't have the courage or the courtesy to even tell the judges what they're thinking, what their rationale is. Do you know how corrosive and destructive that is to the federal judiciary, to our government writ large? And I have to believe now that this is the intent of the Supreme Court, is to help Donald Trump destroy American democracy. I'm sorry. That's what the 6 justices are doing. I have to listen. We've been beaten over the head so many times with bad, unsupportable, unconstitutional decisions that I think we can reasonably infer that the intent of those six radical right-wing justices is to help Donald Trump destroy democracy, convert America into a dictatorship and autocracy, and they can all rule on high, never having to worry about being held accountable by what, Donald Trump's DOJ? Well, they're going to be held accountable by the people eventually. I have to believe that because if I didn't, I don't think I could get up every morning and fight every day until I go to bed. You know, it's up to us. It's always been up to us. But it's just, it's horrific. So now I'm going to finish with this because I do think it's worth reading Judge Kavanaugh's concurring separate opinion. That's not a majority opinion. And Justice Sotomayor's dissent, which is written in very digestible prose, really powerful and correct, in my opinion, and I think objectively. Constitution has to mean something, and it doesn't to the six justice majority. And, you know, there's so much in Justice Kavanaugh's separate concurring opinion that is just laughable. Like he said, well, if we want to, you know, rule this way, we would have to overrule precedent. We're loath to overrule precedent. Really? Really, Brett? You beer guzzling piece of shit? Do you remember Roe v. Wade? You didn't seem to have any concern about overruling that precedent, but now, when God forbid some undocumented folks might enjoy the constitutional rights that we all enjoy, that they're supposed to enjoy, oh, we don't want to interfere with precedent. What a double standard, mealy mouth prick you are. Something's got to give, folks. Something's got to give, friends. And I hope to hell it's not our democracy. But I feel like we're taking incoming from all sides. I'm not sugarcoating it tonight. I feel like we're taking incoming from all sides. But, you know, we can't give up. We can't give in. We can't stop fighting or rallying or marching or protesting or standing up or speaking out or staying strong or making our voices heard. We can't, and we won't. Do I believe we're going to win at the end of the day? Yes, I believe we're going to prevail. I have to believe that. But look, you know, we're in a tough spot. We're taking incoming from all sides, from a lot of dark forces, from people who are threatened by diversity, people who are threatened by a simple application of the constitutional protections fairly to everyone. I would never say don't deport people. Deport people after they have enjoyed their due process. I would never say don't arrest people, don't search people, don't seize people, but damn it, do it in compliance with the Constitution. Don't make separate categories where Hispanics are somehow lesser. Don't do it. If you're going to do it right. You know, if you look at the piece I wrote, I'm not pushing you to it, friends, but man, I poured my heart out in it. I did a drawing. I'm the world. I'm gonna try to cheer myself up and maybe cheer you all up a little bit in the process. I did a drawing, and I am the world's worst artist. I mean, I can barely draw a stick figure. I'm bad. But on the first day of class each semester for 10 semesters running, until I recently took a hiatus, on the first day of class with my George Washington University criminal justice students, I would draw something on, I would say the blackboard, but technically it's a whiteboard. And it's the only thing I drew all semester for real. And what I tried to draw was a picture of a brick wall. You'll see my artist's rendering of it if you go on my Substack piece. You'll see what a poor artist I am. It's a brick wall. And on one side of the brick wall, police, prosecutors, government. On the other side of the brick wall, we the people. And you know what that brick wall represents? The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution before it was amended by the Supreme Court. And I write Fourth Amendment on top of that wall. And the police and the prosecutors can't climb over that wall. They can't go through that wall. They can't go around that wall unless they do it right. And doing it right means that you have to have enough evidence, probable cause or reasonable suspicion to seize somebody, because the right of the people to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Whether you're Hispanic, black, white, Asian, whether you're straight, gay, bi, trans, everybody, everybody should enjoy the same protections of the Fourth Amendment. It's that brick wall that separates the government, the police and prosecutors from the people. And that's why it's my favorite amendment, because it gives us protection. It gives us autonomy to live our lives as we choose to live them. But if we're violating the law and the police want to climb over or go around that brick wall or go through it, they have to do it right. But today, September 9th, after yesterday's Supreme Court opinion, the Fourth Amendment no longer applies with full force to our Hispanic, our Latino brothers and sisters. And that's something we have to fucking correct. We have to correct that. We have one hell of a cleanup mission ahead of us, friends. One hell of a cleanup mission. Are we up to the challenge? We have no choice. Friends, thanks for bearing with me. Thank you for letting me rant and rave and vent and yell and cuss. I try so hard not, I guess I don't try as hard as I could. But thank you for giving me the leeway to vent and to speak my mind in a straightforward way. You know, this ain't a game. This is our democracy. And we need to keep fighting for it. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday night. Thank you for joining me. I will be back with you tomorrow night. And damn it, let's look for some good news stories. Let's look for some points of light tomorrow, because, you know, when the morning light comes streaming in, we'll get up and do it again. Amen. Good night, everybody.